How positive thinking brought me success and prosperity in 30 days. You know, it still amazes me how everything can change when your thoughts begin to change. 30 days ago, I was in the same place most people find themselves, full of dreams but surrounded by doubt, chasing goals but held back by invisible limits. I had read countless books, listened to motivational speeches, even practiced affirmations, but something was missing. I realized that positive thinking wasn't about repeating nice phrases or pretending everything was fine. It was about reprogramming how I perceived myself, my potential, and the energy I carried into every moment. So I decided to commit 30 days of pure mental discipline, focusing entirely on one principle. My mind creates my reality. What happened next wasn't magic, but it felt like it. The opportunities, the synchronicities, the confidence, it all began to flow naturally. And that's exactly what I'm going to share with you in this video. This isn't theory. It's not just about staying positive. It's about rewiring your subconscious to align with success and prosperity on every level: mental, emotional, energetic, and practical. So if you've ever felt like your thoughts are sabotaging your goals, or that success always seems to slip away right when it's within reach, this message is for you. Because in the next few minutes, you're going to discover how positive thinking, when understood and practiced correctly, can transform your entire reality in less than a month. I'll share what I did, how I did it, and what you can start doing today to activate that same power within yourself. Let's dive in. Topic 1. The turning point. When I realized my thoughts were creating my reality, it all began on a quiet, almost meaningless morning. One of those days where everything feels normal on the outside, but something inside you is restless, whispering that something isn't right. I woke up early, like I always did. The same bed, the same routine, the same phone in my hand, lighting up with notifications that didn't seem to matter. I scrolled, half awake, through messages, news, and numbers, and then I saw my bank balance. That single moment of looking at it hit me like a cold wave. Nothing had changed. I had been working hard, doing everything I thought I should be doing, and yet I was stuck in the same place. It wasn't that my life was falling apart. It was that it wasn't moving forward. And that stillness, that quiet stagnation felt heavier than failure itself. Something inside me finally spoke. A small, almost defiant voice. What if the problem isn't out there? What if the problem is in here? I remember freezing for a moment. Could it be that simple? Could it be that my thoughts, the words I repeated silently to myself, the beliefs I defended without realizing, were the invisible architects of the reality I was living? That question changed everything. I had heard phrases like, "Your thoughts create your reality," so many times before. I had read them in books, seen them in motivational quotes, even shared them with others, but they never truly landed. They were nice ideas, poetic maybe, but not something I deeply believed. But that morning felt different. I saw the pattern clearly for the first time. Every time I had thought, "It's not working," "Money is hard to make," or "People like me don't get lucky," I wasn't just thinking, I was programming. My words were signals, and life was simply responding to the frequency I was transmitting. That realization hit me so hard that I made a decision on the spot. I would test it. I would treat my mind like a laboratory, my thoughts like experiments. For 30 days, I would train my mind as if I were reprogramming a machine, only allowing thoughts aligned with success, gratitude, and prosperity. No complaining, no criticism, no imagining worst-case scenarios. I wanted to see, really see, what would happen if I consciously directed my mind instead of letting it wander into negativity. The first few days were chaos. My subconscious resisted every new instruction. It felt unnatural to think positively on purpose. I caught myself countless times doubting, worrying, expecting things to go wrong. Old habits have deep roots, and my mind had been conditioned for years to expect struggle. But each time I slipped, I stopped myself, took a breath, and said, "No, my thoughts are creative. I am the cause. My life is the effect. Change the cause, and the effect must follow." At first, it felt forced, but little by little, something started to shift. I began noticing how negative thinking had become an addiction, a form of emotional comfort that disguised itself as realism. I had been rehearsing failure in my mind long before I experienced it in real life. Every self-doubt, Every moment of imagining how things could go wrong was an order I was placing to the universe, and it was fulfilling it faithfully. Once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. So I started speaking to myself differently. I began using words that felt empowering, even if I didn't fully believe them yet. Instead of saying, "I'm tired," I would say, "I'm recharging." Instead of saying, "This is hard," I'd whisper, "I'm learning." And instead of saying, "I never get lucky," I'd affirm, "Everything is aligning for my highest good." It wasn't about lying to myself. It was about training my brain to interpret reality through a new lens. And slowly, I could feel that lens clearing up the fog that had been blurring my vision for years. By the end of the first week, I noticed something subtle but powerful. I was calmer. I wasn't reacting to small problems like before. I was less anxious about money, less frustrated about delays, less impatient about progress. And strangely enough, as soon as I stopped fighting against life, life began to move again. I received an unexpected payment. A friend recommended me for an opportunity I hadn't even been looking for. A message arrived from someone who had previously ignored my work. At first I thought, that's just coincidence. But then the coincidences kept happening, too precise, too synchronized to ignore. It was as if the outer world was simply matching the vibration of my inner world. When I began thinking in terms of possibility, possibility found me. When I began expecting prosperity, prosperity found its way to me. That's when it became clear. Positive thinking isn't pretending things are perfect. It's aligning your energy with the version of reality you actually want to live. I realized that the subconscious mind doesn't care whether what you think is true or false, good or bad. It simply obeys. It's the ultimate servant. Whatever command you give it repeatedly, it will execute. And I had been commanding lack, limitation, and self-doubt for years without realizing it. Once I changed the command, the response changed automatically. By the second week, my body even started to change. My energy was lighter. I walked differently. I looked people in the eyes more. I began waking up with excitement instead of dread. I wasn't chasing success anymore. I was attracting it. And it wasn't because I found a new strategy or secret formula. It was because my inner state finally matched the outer results I'd been craving all along. Positive thinking, I discovered, isn't just a motivational cliche. It's neuroscience. It's how the brain rewires itself to perceive opportunity instead of threat. Every positive thought fires new neural connections. Every affirmation strengthens a belief. Every grateful moment releases chemicals that expand awareness. It's not about denying reality. It's about programming your nervous system to expect the best, so your brain filters and creates experiences that confirm that expectation. When I reached the end of those 30 days, I wasn't just more successful financially. I was transformed mentally. I had become the kind of person who didn't need external proof to believe. I carried certainty inside me. I finally understood that success is not a destination. It's a vibration. Prosperity is not something you chase. It's something you tune into. And once you tune into it, once you begin thinking from abundance instead of about abundance, life starts reflecting that back to you in ways that feel almost miraculous. The people you meet, the doors that open, the timing that unfolds, everything begins to synchronize with your new state of being. That's the power of positive thinking when it's lived consciously and consistently. I looked back after those 30 days and realized something profound. I had been trying to change my life from the outside for years, but the real transformation began only when I changed the conversation inside my own head. The moment I took responsibility for every thought, not with guilt, but with awareness, I took my power back. I stopped waiting for luck and started generating alignment. That was my turning point. The moment I understood that my thoughts weren't random background noise. They were creative instructions. And when I began thinking with intention, life began responding with precision. Positive thinking brought me success and prosperity not because it was magical, but because it was magnetic. Topic 2. Reprogramming the mind, from automatic negativity to conscious creation. When I began this journey, I quickly realized something most people never question. The mind runs on autopilot. Around 90% of our thoughts today are the same ones we had yesterday. The same doubts, the same worries, the same inner conversations that quietly define who we think we are. It's like living inside a movie we didn't mean to direct, watching the same scenes play over and over again. That's why change feels so hard, because we're trying to create a new life with an old script. I used to think I was in control of my thoughts. I wasn't. My subconscious was. And the subconscious doesn't respond to logic. It responds to repetition, emotion, and belief. It's been programmed by everything I've heard, felt, and experienced since childhood. Every time someone said, "Money doesn't grow on trees," "You have to struggle to succeed," or "Be realistic," my mind stored those phrases as truth. I grew up thinking life was about effort, sacrifice, and constant pushing, not about flow, alignment, or ease. So even when I worked hard and did everything right, my subconscious would quietly sabotage me. It wasn't trying to punish me. It was trying to protect me from what it perceived as risk. That's when it hit me. To create prosperity, I had to reprogram my subconscious, not through willpower, but through repetition. The same way it had learned limitation, it could learn abundance. The brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. If you visualize something vividly enough, your nervous system reacts as if it's already happening. That's why visualization and affirmations are powerful tools, not because they're mystical, but because they're neurological. So I created a simple mental routine that became the foundation of my 30-day experiment. Every morning, before touching my phone, I spent a few minutes programming my mind for the day. I'd close my eyes, take a deep breath, and visualize my life as if everything I desired was already happening. I'd see myself walking confidently, smiling, feeling fulfilled, financially secure, and grateful. I'd imagine opening messages of good news, feeling peace about money, and meeting people who respected my energy. I didn't just picture it, I felt it. That was the key. Emotion is the language of the subconscious. Thoughts are instructions, but emotion is the power source that makes them real. When you think something and feel it at the same time, you impress that belief into your subconscious. It becomes a new command. So instead of just saying, "I am abundant," I made myself feel abundant. I looked around and found evidence of prosperity. The sunlight coming through the window, the coffee I was able to drink, the technology that allowed me to learn. I realized that abundance wasn't something far away. It was everywhere, waiting for my awareness to tune into it. The first few days were strange. My mind fought back. It wanted to return to its comfort zone of worrying, overthinking, and self-doubt. It whispered things like, "This won't last," or "You're just pretending." But I learned to see those thoughts not as enemies, but as echoes, old programming trying to stay alive. I didn't argue with them. I replaced them. Every time a negative thought appeared, I said, "Cancel, delete," and replaced it with something empowering. I am safe. I am guided. Everything is working in my favor. Over time, I noticed something subtle but profound. My emotional baseline was changing. I wasn't anxious the way I used to be. I wasn't constantly waiting for something to go wrong. My energy was becoming more stable, more peaceful. And with that, peace came clarity. Ideas flowed more easily. Creativity returned. And I started noticing opportunities I would have missed before. It was as if reprogramming my mind had cleared the static, allowing intuition and inspiration to come through clearly. That's when I began to understand how the subconscious truly works. It's like fertile soil. It doesn't care what you plant. It simply grows whatever you feed it consistently. If you plant seeds of fear, doubt, or scarcity, that's what will grow. But if you plant thoughts of gratitude, success, and possibility, that's what will multiply. The soil never argues with the seed. It just obeys the nature of what's planted. So I stopped planting weeds. I started planting wealth. And soon, my outer world began to mirror that inner transformation. The people around me changed, not because they changed, but because my energy did. Conversations felt lighter. Conflicts dissolved faster. Even the way people treated me started to shift. It was as if the universe was saying, "Finally, you're aligned with the signal you've been asking for." The biggest breakthrough came around day 15. I was meditating on the feeling of abundance when a deep insight hit me. My subconscious had always been listening, but I had been speaking the wrong language. I had been trying to convince it with logic, but logic doesn't move energy. Emotion does. I realized that to truly reprogram my mind, I needed to create new emotional experiences, not just new sentences. So I began doing everything with intention, walking as if I already succeeded, speaking as if prosperity was natural, acting as if opportunities were everywhere. The more I lived that way, the more evidence life gave me that it was true. Reprogramming the mind isn't about denying negative thoughts. It's about mastering awareness. The goal isn't to never feel doubt. It's to stop letting doubt drive. When you observe a negative thought without identifying with it, you begin to separate who you are from what you think. And once that distance is created, transformation begins. By the end of the month, I noticed that what used to trigger anxiety no longer did. Challenges didn't intimidate me. They felt like puzzles waiting to be solved. I was living proof that when you train the mind to expect the best, it begins to find paths that lead to it. The more I fed it positivity, the more it responded with creativity, ideas, and inspiration that matched that frequency. The mind, I realized, is both a mirror and a magnet. It reflects what you believe and attracts what you focus on. For most of my life, it reflected fear. Now, it was reflecting faith. And that faith became my greatest currency. The invisible force that turned invisible thoughts into visible results. That's the real power of positive thinking. It's not just about repeating affirmations. It's about reprogramming the emotional code of your subconscious. Once that code changes, everything else, your behavior, your results, your reality, changes automatically. Topic 3. The science of vibration. How energy shapes success and prosperity. As the days went by, something fascinating began to happen. The more I practiced positive thinking, the more I started to feel energy. Not in some mystical way, but in a very real, tangible sense. I began noticing how every thought, every emotion carried a vibration. Some made me feel heavy and drained. Others made me feel light, powerful, alive. It was as if life itself was responding to my inner frequency. I wasn't just thinking differently, I was vibrating differently. That's when I realized something that changed everything. Success and prosperity are not random. They are vibrational states. We don't achieve them by luck or hard work alone. We align with them through the energy we emit. The universe doesn't respond to words. It responds to frequency. You can say, "I am rich," all day long, but if your energy screams fear, doubt, or scarcity, the signal gets jammed. The outer world mirrors your dominant inner vibration, not your occasional positive thought. So I began to study myself like a scientist of consciousness. Whenever something positive happened, I asked, what was I feeling before this? And when something negative appeared, I asked, what energy was I in when I attracted this? The patterns were undeniable. When I felt grateful, calm, and confident, opportunities flowed effortlessly. When I felt anxious, rushed, or unworthy, everything seemed to resist me. It reminded me of tuning a radio. Prosperity has a frequency, and so does scarcity. You can't listen to abundance while your dial is still tuned to fear. Positive thinking was the process of tuning that dial, shifting from the energy of "I hope" to "I know," from "someday" to "already." It wasn't about pretending everything was perfect. It was about feeling the energy of completion before the physical result appeared. That's when I began to understand why gratitude is one of the most powerful emotional frequencies we can generate. Gratitude signals to the subconscious that you already have what you need. It turns your focus away from lack and towards sufficiency. And because energy expands where attention goes, gratitude multiplies whatever you appreciate. When I started genuinely feeling thankful for small things, a warm meal, a kind message, a quiet evening, I noticed more and more reasons to be thankful. The universe seemed to respond with generosity. There's also a scientific explanation behind it. Neuroscience shows that positive emotions like gratitude and joy activate parts of the brain associated with creativity, problem-solving, and resilience. They release dopamine and serotonin, the chemicals that make you feel good, confident, and motivated. That's not just psychology. It's biology aligning with your intention. Positive thinking doesn't just change your mood, it changes your neurochemistry. And that chemistry alters your perception, which then alters your reality. At one point during my 30-day transformation, I experienced something I can only describe as mental clarity, a deep stillness that came from being in alignment. I woke up one morning and felt as if everything in my life was connected, like pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. It wasn't that everything outside me had changed. It was that my inner frequency had harmonized. I was no longer fighting against life. I was flowing with it. In that state, I noticed how easily ideas came to me. I started writing with inspiration, speaking with confidence, attracting the right people effortlessly. Clients seemed to appear without effort, conversations led to new opportunities, and solutions showed up exactly when I needed them. This wasn't coincidence, it was resonance. When you raise your vibration, you become a magnet for experiences that match it. Of course, there were moments when old vibrations tried to pull me back. Doubt, fear, impatience. But this time, I didn't resist them. I observed them. I realized that every lower emotion carries information. Fear shows you where you still don't trust. Anger shows you where you still feel powerless. Instead of fighting those emotions, I thanked them for revealing the areas I needed to heal. By doing that, I neutralized their power. I stopped letting them lower my frequency. This is what I call emotional mastery. Not being happy all the time, but being aware all the time. Awareness gives you choice, and choice gives you freedom. Once I learned to manage my energy, I stopped being reactive. I stopped letting other people's negativity affect me. I became the thermostat, not the thermometer. I decided the temperature of my own vibration. Over the course of those 30 days, my entire reality began to transform. Not because I suddenly had more resources, but because I had more coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions align, your energy becomes powerful, focused like a laser. The universe responds faster because you're no longer sending mixed signals. You're broadcasting a clear message. I am ready, I am abundant, I am aligned. And that's exactly what started showing up. Unexpected income, new collaborations, peaceful sleep, confidence in my decisions. It all felt effortless because it was flowing from alignment, not struggle. I finally understood what people mean when they say, "You attract what you are." It's not poetic, it's literal. The world is a mirror, reflecting your inner vibration back to you in physical form. Once you grasp this, you can't go back to thinking that life happens to you. You see that it's happening through you. Every outcome, every coincidence, every so-called accident is just feedback, a mirror of the energy you're projecting. That awareness is the essence of empowerment. Because when you understand that energy precedes matter, you stop trying to force outcomes and start mastering your vibration. By the end of those 30 days, I wasn't just thinking positively, I was vibrating positively. Success no longer felt like something I had to chase. It felt like something that was naturally drawn to me. Prosperity stopped being a distant dream and became a state of being. And that state began to shape everything. My words, my body language, my relationships, my opportunities. That's the science of vibration. The law is simple. Whatever frequency you emit consistently becomes the reality you experience. When you think higher thoughts, you feel higher emotions. And when you feel higher emotions, you attract higher outcomes. It's not magic, it's energetic mathematics. The universe doesn't play favorites, it plays frequencies. And the moment you realize that, your entire approach to life changes. You stop waiting for miracles and start becoming one. Topic 4. The inner dialogue, transforming the voice that shapes your destiny. One of the most powerful discoveries I made during those 30 days was this. The most influential voice in my life wasn't the one from my mentors, family, or society. It was the quiet, constant voice inside my own head. My inner dialogue. The way I spoke to myself when no one else was listening. That inner voice was either my greatest ally or my greatest saboteur, and for most of my life, I hadn't even realized how destructive it had become. We often talk about mindset as if it's something external, a skill we acquire, a trick we master. But mindset is really the echo of our inner conversations. It's the tone we use when we think about ourselves, our future, and our past. It's the collection of silent statements that define what we believe we deserve. I began to pay attention to that voice. To the words, the emotions, the subtle self-talk that played beneath the surface of everything I did. And what I discovered was shocking. That voice was constantly judging, doubting, criticizing, warning. It told me I wasn't ready, that success was for others, that I should be careful not to aim too high. Sometimes it spoke in the tone of fear, other times in the tone of logic. But the message was always the same. Stay small, stay safe. I realized that my thoughts about success had been fighting against an invisible mental current, a dialogue programmed by old fears, by other people's beliefs, and by my own past experiences. So I decided to change the conversation. Literally, Every time I caught my mind saying something negative, I paused and asked, would I speak like this to someone I love? The answer was always no, and that question alone became a turning point. It made me aware of how cruel I had been to myself, how I had tolerated mental abuse disguised as realism. Positive thinking wasn't just about repeating affirmations. It was about cultivating a relationship of respect with myself. I began to talk to myself as I would to a close friend, with patience, compassion, and truth. When I made mistakes, I said, that's okay, you're learning. When I felt fear, I said, it's natural, you're growing. When I doubted my path, I reminded myself, you've come this far, and everything is aligning. This practice might sound simple, but it started to heal something deep within me. The more I spoke to myself with kindness, the more confident and peaceful I became. Our subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between self-talk and external feedback. Whatever we say internally becomes the emotional environment our brain lives in. If your inner voice is constantly shouting, you're not enough, your nervous system lives in survival mode. But when that voice begins to whisper, you are capable, safe, guided, the body relaxes, creativity increases, and intuition awakens. It's not just emotional, it's physiological. The chemistry of your body shifts according to the words you feed it. As I practiced this new way of communicating with myself, I started noticing immediate effects. My energy became lighter, my decisions clearer. I was no longer paralyzed by fear of failure because I had replaced criticism with encouragement. I began to realize how much I had been waiting for validation from others, for someone to say, you can do this. But the truth is, I needed to hear it from myself first. There's immense power in self-approval. When you approve of yourself, you stop chasing acceptance and start radiating confidence. You stop asking life for permission and start giving yourself permission. That's what positive thinking really means at its core. Not blind optimism, but conscious encouragement. It's the choice to believe in your potential even before there's proof. I remember one specific moment during that month that changed everything. I was facing a decision that scared me, an opportunity that felt too big, too soon. The old voice in my head said, you're not ready. You'll embarrass yourself. But this time I paused, took a deep breath, and replied, what if I am ready? What if this is exactly what I've been preparing for? That single shift in inner dialogue gave me the courage to act. And that decision opened a door that eventually multiplied my income and confidence in ways I couldn't have imagined. The more I listened to my mind, the more I understood that thoughts are like living entities. They feed on attention. If you focus on fear, fear grows. If you focus on faith, faith expands. Positive thinking is not about ignoring negative thoughts. It's about starving them of attention until they dissolve. I learned to thank my doubts for trying to protect me, then gently redirect my focus to what I wanted to create. In neuroscience, this process is known as neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated experience. Every new pattern of thought creates a new neural pathway. Every time I replaced self-criticism with self-belief, I was literally building a new mental structure. And as that structure solidified, it became easier and more natural to think positively without forcing it. Within a few weeks, my inner dialogue had completely changed. The voice that once doubted now encouraged. The voice that once feared now trusted. I realized that success wasn't something external to reach. It was a conversation to master. My thoughts were no longer my enemies. They were my teammates. And that internal unity produced a quiet confidence that radiated outward. People noticed it. Opportunities noticed it. Life noticed it. The truth is, prosperity begins in the mind, but it's sustained by the dialogue you keep with yourself. You can visualize wealth, affirm abundance, and read every book about success. But if your inner voice keeps whispering, you can't, your vibration will never match your desire. The mind doesn't manifest what you want. It manifests what you believe you deserve. Changing that belief, transforming that internal language, is the real work. It's not glamorous, it's daily, it's conscious, but it's also liberating. Because once you start speaking to yourself as the person you want to become, the world has no choice but to reflect that new identity back to you. That's how I began to experience success and prosperity on a deeper level, not as luck, not as coincidence, but as the natural outcome of an inner dialogue that finally aligned with my highest truth. Positive thinking had stopped being a technique. It had become my language, my energy, and my way of existing in the world. Topic 5. The momentum of transformation. When inner change becomes outer prosperity. By the time I reached the middle of my 30-day journey, something inside me had shifted so deeply that I could no longer see the world the same way. My thoughts were different, my emotions lighter, my confidence more natural. But what surprised me most was how my reality began to rearrange itself around that inner change, almost as if the universe was mirroring back my new vibration. It wasn't subtle anymore. It was obvious. Things that used to feel difficult suddenly flowed with ease. People who had once ignored me were now reaching out. Opportunities were showing up that I hadn't even searched for. It felt as if life had been waiting for me to align with it. That's when I truly understood momentum. Not the physical kind, but the energetic one. Once your inner state starts to align with prosperity, it gains its own gravity. It pulls similar energy toward it, like a magnetic current that grows stronger with each positive thought, each act of faith, each moment of gratitude. Positive thinking had stopped being an effort and started becoming a rhythm, a flow that I naturally lived in. Momentum is a fascinating thing. When you start with one small shift, like choosing to see the good in a situation, it might not seem significant, but that single decision changes your mood, your tone, your energy. That new energy affects the people you meet, the opportunities you notice, and the way you respond to challenges. And those reactions create results that reinforce your belief that positivity works. That's the loop of transformation. Belief fuels action, action reinforces belief, and belief multiplies prosperity. Once that loop begins, it's unstoppable. One of the clearest signs of momentum is synchronicity, those perfect, almost magical coincidences that start appearing in your life. You think of someone and they call. You visualize a goal, and suddenly the right contact appears. You decide to trust your intuition, and everything begins to align. These aren't random. They're signs that your frequency has stabilized in alignment with what you desire. The universe speaks through timing, symbols, and flow, and when you're tuned in, you recognize its language. During that phase, I felt guided, not by logic, but by intuition. Decisions that once paralyzed me now felt easy. I no longer needed to force outcomes. I could sense when to move, when to wait, when to speak, when to listen. It was as if something greater was working with me, not against me. And that's when I realized that true prosperity isn't just about financial gain. It's about being in harmony with life itself. When you trust your path, even uncertainty feels safe. Around that time, I started noticing a fascinating paradox. The more I focused on feeling abundant, the less I obsessed about results. I wasn't chasing success anymore. I was embodying it. I began to enjoy the process, the conversations, the creativity, the small daily victories. I felt wealthy in time, in peace, in clarity. And because I wasn't attached to outcomes, results flowed faster. That's one of the hidden laws of prosperity. Detachment accelerates manifestation. When you no longer need something to complete you, it finds you naturally, because you're no longer blocking it with desperation or fear. I remember one specific afternoon during that period. I was sitting in a cafe, reflecting on how far I'd come in just a few weeks. I had clients reaching out, ideas flowing, and a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in years. I smiled quietly because I realized I didn't get lucky. I got aligned. I wasn't waiting for opportunities anymore. I was recognizing them. They had been around me all along, but my old mindset couldn't see them. Positive thinking didn't create new possibilities. It simply made me aware of the ones that were already there. That realization filled me with a sense of power I can't describe. Not the kind of power that dominates or controls, but the kind that expands, that reminds you that you're a co-creator of reality, not a victim of circumstance. Every time I chose to think positively in the face of doubt, I was exercising that creative power. Every time I replaced fear with gratitude, I was tuning into the frequency of prosperity. Every time I trusted instead of worrying, I was building momentum. People around me began to notice the change. Friends asked, "What's different about you?" My response was simple: everything, because I finally decided to think on purpose. That's the essence of transformation. It's not about adding something new to your life. It's about removing the old thought patterns that were blocking what was already waiting for you. there's also a psychological dimension to this. When you live in a positive emotional state, your brain's reticular activating system, the filter that determines what you notice, begins to prioritize information that aligns with your goals. It literally helps you see more opportunities. That's why success seems to suddenly appear once you shift your mindset. It was there all along. Your mind just wasn't tuned to it before. By the final week of that experiment, I could feel the compounding effect of 30 days of alignment. Confidence had become natural. Gratitude had become instinctive. Prosperity had become a state of being rather than a pursuit. My vibration was consistent, my focus clear, and my energy magnetic. I had built what I now call the prosperity momentum, that invisible current that carries you forward with ease once you've aligned your thoughts, emotions, and actions in the same direction. When I look back now, I see that moment as the true threshold, the point where inner change became outer reality. Positive thinking had moved beyond affirmations or daily exercises. It had become a new identity, a way of being, breathing, and creating. And from that place, success and prosperity stopped being distant dreams and started being the natural reflection of who I had become. Momentum, once it begins, doesn't stop easily. It keeps expanding, multiplying, and magnetizing. That's why the key isn't to chase speed. It's to stay aligned. Because once you're in that flow, everything you desire starts moving towards you with a sense of divine timing. You no longer doubt the process because you can feel it working. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a 30-day experiment anymore. It was the start of a lifelong practice, a way of living where prosperity isn't a goal to reach, but a frequency to maintain. Positive thinking had reprogrammed not just my mind, but my entire state of being. And from that energy, life began to unfold like a perfect symphony, note by note, all in harmony with the rhythm I had finally learned to conduct from within. Topic 6. When prosperity becomes visible, the manifestation of a new reality. Around the third week of my 30-day transformation, I began to notice something that took me by surprise. Up until that point, most of the changes I experienced were internal: peace of mind, emotional balance, focus, confidence. But then, almost quietly, without any dramatic event, the outer world started catching up to my new vibration. Opportunities appeared that seemed perfectly designed for me. Unexpected income arrived through channels I hadn't even considered. People began approaching me with ideas, collaborations, and projects that aligned exactly with what I'd been visualizing. It was as if my inner work had finally crossed the threshold from the invisible to the visible. That's the moment when positive thinking transforms from a concept into evidence, when you no longer believe it works. You know it does, because you can see it, touch it, live it. And yet, it doesn't feel shocking. It feels natural, like something you always sensed was meant to happen. That's the true essence of manifestation. Not surprise, but recognition. The feeling that what's unfolding was always on its way, waiting for your vibration to become a match. For me, it began with one simple experience. I received a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in months, a former client who wanted to re-engage, but this time with a much bigger project. Normally, I would have overanalyzed, doubted, or worried about saying the wrong thing. But my mind was different now. Instead of hesitation, I felt certainty. Instead of fear, I felt trust. I replied calmly, clearly, and confidently, and within days, that opportunity became one of the biggest successes of that year. That single event showed me that manifestation isn't about chasing results. It's about becoming the kind of person for whom those results are inevitable. I wasn't trying to attract prosperity anymore. I was embodying it. And because I was living from that energy, reality simply adjusted to reflect it. It wasn't just financial success either. My relationships started improving. Conversations felt lighter, more genuine. People seemed happier to be around me. Even strangers smiled more. I know that sounds small, but it's a sign of energetic harmony. When your vibration becomes high enough, it influences your entire field of experience. You emit peace, and the world mirrors it back. This is when I realized something profound. Positive thinking isn't about controlling the external world. It's about mastering the internal frequency that creates the external world. Once your energy stabilizes, everything outside naturally reorganizes. You don't have to force, chase, or push. The flow takes over. Prosperity, by its nature, is magnetic. It moves toward order, coherence, and clarity. The more I aligned with gratitude and self-belief, the more life seemed to align with me. I remember waking up one morning with this incredible sense of calm certainty. Not excitement, certainty. I didn't know exactly how everything would unfold, but I knew that it would. It was the kind of peace that comes from complete alignment between thought, feeling, and belief. I understood that I was no longer working for success. I was working from success. That shift in consciousness changes everything. When you create from abundance instead of lack, every action becomes more effective. During that week, I noticed that my creative ideas were stronger. Words flowed effortlessly when I worked. I could sense what decisions would lead to growth and which ones would drain energy. Intuition became louder than fear, and the results were undeniable. More visibility, more clients, more balance. The success didn't feel like a reward. It felt like a reflection of who I had become. There's a scientific component to this as well. When your mind and body align emotionally with success, your brain releases chemicals that sharpen focus and improve decision-making. Dopamine and serotonin don't just make you feel good. They enhance performance, memory, and resilience. Your physiology starts working with your goals instead of against them. That's why happiness isn't a byproduct of success. It's the foundation of it. Still, I knew that this phase required humility. The moment prosperity begins to appear, the ego wants to take credit. But true abundance doesn't come from ego. It comes from alignment. It's not about proving your worth. It's about expressing it. I learned to celebrate every manifestation with gratitude, not pride. Because gratitude keeps the energy pure. It reminds you that abundance flows through you, not to you. I also realized that abundance doesn't mean everything is perfect. Challenges still appear, but they no longer carry the same emotional weight. When your mindset is stable, even obstacles feel like opportunities for refinement. I stopped reacting and started responding. I began asking better questions. What is this teaching me? What belief is this inviting me to change? That shift turned every challenge into an ally. One of the most beautiful parts of this journey was seeing how my external environment reflected my internal growth. People who matched my old energy slowly faded away, and new ones entered, more supportive, inspiring, and aligned. My surroundings became lighter. Even my workspace felt different. It's fascinating how, when you raise your frequency, your entire reality rearranges to match it. By the final stretch of that 30-day period, it was undeniable. I was living in a new dimension of consciousness. My outer success wasn't separate from my inner transformation. They were one and the same. I no longer wondered if positive thinking worked. I started wondering why I had ever doubted it in the first place. Because now every moment of my day carried proof. Money flowed more easily. Relationships deepened. Ideas blossomed. But more than all that, I felt free. Free from anxiety. Free from the need to control everything. Free from the old version of myself that lived in constant lack. That freedom was the true manifestation. Because once you feel abundant within, everything else is just a natural extension. That's the stage where prosperity becomes visible, when the invisible work of the mind and soul finally solidifies into tangible reality. It's not sudden magic, it's accumulated alignment. Every thought, every emotion, every act of gratitude compounds until it reaches critical mass. And then, click, your outer world catches up. Positive thinking at that point stops being a discipline. It becomes your nature. And once that happens, you don't need to chase success anymore, because you've become the source of it. Topic 7. Living in the flow, sustaining prosperity as a way of life. After 30 days of conscious transformation, something extraordinary began to happen. Not the explosive, cinematic kind of change people imagine when they think of manifestation, but a deeper, more permanent shift. Prosperity stopped being something I had to practice. It became the atmosphere I lived in. Every thought, every action, every conversation carried the vibration of abundance without effort. It wasn't a habit anymore. It was my natural state. The most beautiful part was realizing that prosperity is not an event. It's a frequency. And once you learn to live in that frequency, everything you do begins to align with it. You don't need to force anything or constantly manifest. You simply maintain awareness. Life becomes an elegant collaboration between your inner world and the external universe, a constant exchange of energy, ideas, and opportunities that flows without friction. What changed the most was my relationship with time. Before, I was always rushing, chasing goals, deadlines, and the illusion that happiness was waiting somewhere in the future. But once I entered the flow of prosperity, I started feeling that time was expanding. There was no hurry, no desperation, only clarity. I trusted that everything I needed would arrive at the perfect moment, and it always did. The more I trusted, the more synchronized life became. I began to notice a rhythm in everything, a natural pattern, a divine choreography. I would think of something, and within hours or days it would appear. I'd imagine meeting someone aligned with my next goal, and suddenly, they'd cross my path. I'd need an idea for a project, and inspiration would strike effortlessly. These weren't coincidences. They were confirmations, proof that when you live in alignment with your higher vibration, the universe works with you, not against you. What's interesting is that the more abundance I experienced, the less I thought about manifestation. I stopped asking how things would happen and started focusing on why I wanted them. That simple shift anchored me in purpose instead of pressure. I realized that prosperity wasn't just about receiving, it was about contributing. The more value I created for others, the more abundance flowed back to me. Life was a perfect cycle of giving and receiving, energy in constant motion. One of the most powerful lessons I learned was that gratitude is the fuel that sustains prosperity. Gratitude keeps the energy clean. It prevents complacency and reminds you that abundance is not owed. It's invited. Every morning, I would wake up and give thanks, not for what was coming, but for what was already here. I would thank the smallest things, the sunlight through my window, the smell of coffee, the calm in my heart. That daily practice anchored me in the present, where abundance truly lives. As the weeks passed, I realized that living in flow also meant letting go of resistance, the subtle habit of controlling, overthinking, and doubting. Whenever something didn't go as expected, I stopped labeling it as wrong. I began to see delays as divine timing, detours as protection, and challenges as refinement. That shift in perception kept my energy stable. I no longer reacted emotionally to circumstances. Instead, I responded from alignment. There's a profound sense of freedom in that. You stop being a victim of outcomes and become a co-creator of meaning. You understand that nothing is against you. Everything is guiding you. Even what seems like loss or rejection becomes part of the same current of prosperity when you look from a higher perspective. You start trusting life completely. Living in the flow also changed how I worked. Before, work felt like effort, pushing, planning, striving. Now, it felt like creation, joyful, inspired, intuitive. I worked with energy, not against it. I learned to listen to my intuition before making big decisions. I began to notice that when an idea felt light, expansive, and exciting, it always led to success. When something felt forced or heavy, it always drained me. Prosperity taught me to follow the feeling of alignment. That's the secret most people miss. Prosperity is emotional guidance. It's not just about material wealth, it's about emotional wealth. The more joy, peace, and enthusiasm you cultivate internally, the more life mirrors that externally. Wealth follows well-being. And the more I prioritized my inner state, the more effortless external results became. Another realization that transformed my life was understanding that prosperity thrives in simplicity. I didn't need to do 1,000 things to attract abundance. I just needed to do a few things with full energy and intention. Focus replaced hustle. Clarity replaced confusion. Quality replaced quantity. That's how flow sustains itself, not through effort but through precision. Soon, even the people around me began changing. My environment reflected my new vibration. The conversations I had were deeper, more authentic. The people I attracted were kind, conscious, and generous. I noticed that prosperity loves community. It multiplies when shared. So I began giving, not out of obligation, but from genuine joy. I helped others shift their mindset, offered guidance, shared my experiences, and every time I gave, more came back, often from unexpected sources. I also learned to rest without guilt. In the past, rest felt like a waste of time. But now, I understood that rest was alignment. It was during those quiet moments that new inspiration arrived, new ideas formed, and new doors opened. The mind, when peaceful, becomes a magnet for divine insight. That's how you sustain momentum, by balancing creation and restoration. Living in flow doesn't mean you'll never face challenges again. It means you'll handle them with grace. When something unexpected happens, you won't fall apart. You'll adapt. Because your peace no longer depends on external stability. It's rooted in inner certainty. That's the true wealth, the kind that can't be taken away. By the time I fully realized I was living in this state of flow, I couldn't imagine going back. Everything felt connected. My thoughts, my emotions, my actions, my results. It was as if life itself had become a dialogue between me and the universe, a dance between intention and trust. And in that dance, prosperity wasn't something I had to maintain. It maintained itself. When you reach that level of harmony, you begin to understand why some people seem effortlessly successful. It's not luck, it's alignment. It's a continuous exchange between clarity, gratitude, and faith. That's the ultimate rhythm of prosperity. The flow that never ends, the current that keeps carrying you higher as long as you keep your heart open and your thoughts aligned with the best version of yourself. That's when positive thinking becomes more than a practice. It becomes your way of being, your natural state of consciousness, your most powerful form of prayer, and your most consistent act of creation. Topic 8. Prosperity with purpose, when abundance finds its meaning. When prosperity became a natural part of my daily life, something unexpected happened. I began to ask myself a deeper question. What is all this abundance for? Because after you experience alignment, success, and flow, there's a moment of quiet realization that true fulfillment doesn't come from having more. It comes from becoming more. You begin to feel an inner calling, a desire not just to receive, but to give, to expand beyond yourself, to use your prosperity as a force of purpose. It was around that time that I realized prosperity without purpose is incomplete. It's like having a beautiful symphony with no audience to hear it. The energy of abundance wants to circulate. It needs direction, contribution, and meaning. Prosperity thrives when it serves life itself, when what you create not only benefits you, but uplifts others. One morning, while journaling, I wrote a sentence that felt like it came from somewhere higher than my own mind. The purpose of abundance is expansion, not accumulation. That single line changed how I approached everything. I began seeing wealth, opportunities, and ideas not as possessions to hold, but as channels to express something greater through me. That's when life opened even more. The more I focused on using my prosperity to create value, the more abundance flowed toward me. It was as if the universe was saying, "Finally, you understand. Prosperity grows where it is shared." Every time I helped someone see their own potential, every time I encouraged a friend to believe again, every time I gave without expecting anything back, something magical happened. My own blessings multiplied. I understood that energy follows intention. When your reason for wanting prosperity expands beyond your own comfort, your frequency rises. You move from personal manifestation to universal cooperation. The universe begins to trust you with more because it knows you'll circulate it wisely. It's the same principle as the flow of water. It stagnates when trapped, but stays pure and powerful when it moves. I started to see purpose everywhere, not in grand, dramatic acts, but in the smallest things. A kind word that brightened someone's day. A creative idea that inspired others. A message that made someone believe in themselves again. I realized that abundance expresses itself best through service. And service doesn't mean sacrifice, it means alignment. It's the joy of knowing that your growth contributes to the growth of others. There's an energetic truth behind this. The more you give, the more space you create to receive. When you help others rise, you expand your own energetic container for prosperity. Gratitude, generosity, and purpose work together as amplifiers. They don't drain your energy, they expand it. Every act of kindness strengthens your connection with abundance because it reminds you that wealth is not a competition. It's a circulation of energy. At this point in my journey, my vision for life began to evolve. I wasn't thinking in terms of survival or success anymore. I was thinking in terms of significance. How can I use this energy to leave a mark that outlives me? How can I turn personal transformation into collective elevation? These questions became the new compass of my prosperity. What surprised me most was that when I began aligning my work with purpose, results skyrocketed. but they no longer felt like results. They felt like the natural side effects of authenticity. People could feel the energy behind what I was doing. Clients, collaborators, and opportunities seemed magnetically drawn to the clarity of my purpose. Prosperity followed passion, not the other way around. Purpose, I discovered, is the highest form of wealth. It gives direction to abundance. It's the reason billionaires keep creating long after they could retire. The reason visionaries keep teaching long after they've achieved everything materially. Because at a certain point, prosperity alone isn't enough. The soul craves expansion through contribution. I began to see that the real measure of success isn't what you acquire. It's what you awaken. Prosperity that doesn't serve something bigger becomes empty. Prosperity that inspires others becomes infinite. When your wealth carries meaning, it becomes legacy. When your growth inspires others to believe in their own potential, you become part of something eternal, a chain of consciousness that lifts humanity one thought at a time. I realized that this is why positive thinking is so powerful. It's not just about improving your own life, it's about elevating collective energy. Every time one person shifts from fear to faith, from doubt to belief, from scarcity to abundance, the frequency of the world rises a little higher. Your personal transformation contributes to the evolution of human consciousness itself. That's why living in abundance isn't selfish, it's sacred. The more I lived from that truth, the more I understood that prosperity is a spiritual responsibility. The universe doesn't reward those who chase wealth. It expands those who embody it with integrity. The more grateful and generous you become, the more channels of abundance open for you. Life entrusts you with more when you use it for more. And this awareness changes everything. Work becomes joy. Success becomes service. Prosperity becomes peace. You no longer feel anxious about the future because you know that as long as your purpose is clear, your provision is guaranteed. The universe funds alignment. It always has. By the end of that phase, I could feel a new rhythm within me, a sense of expansion that went beyond personal goals. I was no longer walking a path of success, I was walking a path of meaning. I realized that purpose and prosperity aren't two separate destinations. They are two sides of the same coin. Prosperity gives you the freedom to live your purpose, and purpose keeps your prosperity meaningful and alive. That's when you stop asking, "What can I get?" and start asking, "What can I give through who I've become?" And that question, that single shift of focus, turns abundance into legacy and success into significance. That's the moment prosperity transcends personal gain and becomes universal flow. When your life itself becomes a channel for the expansion of good for yourself and for everyone you touch. Topic 9. The calm within prosperity, emotional mastery and inner peace. As prosperity continued to unfold in my life, I noticed something even more powerful than success itself, a profound sense of inner calm. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes from having everything under control, but a deeper peace that comes from no longer needing to control anything. The constant mental noise that once filled my days, the what-ifs, the doubts, the endless planning, began to dissolve into silence. What replaced it was a quiet confidence, a feeling of being guided, protected, and sustained by something greater than logic. This was the stage where I understood that true prosperity isn't loud, it's calm. It doesn't shout, it radiates. It doesn't chase, it attracts. When your inner world reaches balance, you don't need to force outcomes anymore. They align naturally with your vibration. This was a different kind of abundance. It wasn't measured by numbers or achievements, but by how peaceful I felt while creating, giving, and receiving. I began to see that emotional mastery is the foundation that sustains prosperity. Because abundance without peace eventually becomes exhaustion. You can have everything the world calls success and still feel anxious, restless, or disconnected if your emotions aren't aligned with gratitude and trust. So, I made a decision. I would protect my peace as my greatest form of wealth. Every morning, before diving into work or planning my day, I would sit in stillness. No goals, no affirmations, just presence. I'd breathe deeply and remind myself, I am already complete. Nothing is missing. That single sentence dissolved layers of tension I didn't even know I was carrying. It grounded me in the awareness that abundance isn't something to reach, it's something to remember. You don't create prosperity, you awaken to it. As I practiced this daily stillness, I noticed how emotions became signals rather than storms. When anxiety arose, I didn't fight it. I listened. When impatience showed up, I thanked it for reminding me to trust timing. When fear whispered old stories, I smiled and said, "I see you, but I don't follow you anymore." This awareness turned every emotion into a teacher. I learned that emotional mastery isn't about suppression. It's about conversation, acknowledging the feeling, understanding the message, and then releasing it with compassion. That level of emotional intelligence transformed my energy completely. People began to sense the difference. I wasn't reacting to life anymore. I was responding with clarity. My tone of voice softened, my presence became grounded, and the more peace I carried, the more prosperity flowed. I realized that peace itself is a form of wealth. It's the energy of faith, and faith is magnetic. When you trust deeply, the universe can move freely through you. There's also a profound scientific truth behind this. When you're emotionally calm, your body moves from survival mode into creation mode. Cortisol, the stress hormone, decreases, while dopamine and oxytocin increase. This biochemical balance enhances creativity, focus, and resilience. You literally become more capable of attracting and managing abundance when you're peaceful. Calm is not weakness, it's coherence. It's your system operating in full harmony with your intentions. One of the greatest realizations I had was that prosperity doesn't demand perfection. It requires alignment. You don't need to eliminate every negative thought or emotion to stay abundant. You just need to remain anchored in awareness. The waves of emotion can rise and fall, but as long as your consciousness stays centered, your energy remains stable. That's what emotional mastery really means, to be still inside even when life moves around you. This is where prosperity deepens into grace. You stop measuring success by what you achieve and start measuring it by how you feel while achieving it. You stop reacting to circumstances and start creating from vibration. You stop chasing peace in results and start realizing peace is the cause, not the effect, of every true manifestation. And something beautiful happens when you live this way. You start radiating serenity. People feel safe around you. Your energy becomes magnetic, not because it's loud, but because it's grounded. Opportunities find you because you've become an energetic anchor in a chaotic world. That's the hidden power of positive thinking. It trains your nervous system to stay regulated in any situation. And from that regulation comes clarity. And from clarity comes consistent success. During that stage of my journey, I experienced what I can only describe as inner sovereignty. I no longer felt at the mercy of life. I trusted my intuition, I trusted timing, and most importantly, I trusted myself. I realized that peace isn't the absence of challenge, it's the mastery of perspective. Life didn't suddenly stop presenting obstacles, I simply stopped interpreting them as problems. They became invitations, chances to expand my capacity to stay aligned. Each time I faced uncertainty, I reminded myself everything is unfolding in divine order. And every single time it was true. The delay that frustrated me turned out to protect me. The plan that didn't work out made room for something better. The silence that scared me was the space where new ideas were forming. When you start seeing life that way, you realize that peace and prosperity are not separate. They are one and the same. Two expressions of alignment. By the time I reached the end of that stage, I felt completely renewed. I wasn't the same person who began 30 days earlier. I was calmer, wiser, and infinitely more connected. I didn't feel like I had manifested success. I felt like I had become success, not as an achievement, but as an energy. And from that energy, life continued to unfold gracefully. That's the true secret of lasting prosperity. It's not about controlling the flow of abundance. It's about matching its frequency through peace. The calmer you are, the more clearly you can hear the whispers of intuition. The more centered you remain, the more naturally abundance expands. That's why peace isn't the reward. It's the source. It's the fertile soil from which every dream grows effortlessly. In the end, emotional mastery became my greatest wealth. Because once you master the inner world, the outer world has no choice but to follow. Topic 10. The new identity. Becoming the source of prosperity and success. As the 30 days came to an end, I sat quietly one morning reflecting on everything that had happened. Not just what I had achieved, but who I had become. I realized that this journey wasn't about positive thinking as a technique. It was about identity. It was about remembering who I truly was beneath the noise, the fear, and the old stories I used to repeat to myself. It was about understanding that I was never meant to chase prosperity. I was meant to embody it. For years, I thought success was something outside of me, a mountain to climb, a finish line to cross, a dream to someday reach. But now, after 30 days of rewiring my thoughts, emotions, and energy, I could see the truth clearly. Success isn't something we get. It's something we remember. It's the natural reflection of alignment between our inner being and outer reality. It's what happens when your thoughts, emotions, and actions begin to speak the same language, the language of abundance. I began to notice how effortlessly things flowed when I no longer doubted myself, how opportunities arrived without struggle, how peace stayed with me even during uncertainty. That's when it hit me. The entire universe had always been ready to deliver, but it was waiting for me to match its signal. Life wasn't withholding anything from me. I had simply been out of tune. Now everything was in harmony. I was no longer living by default, reacting to circumstances, repeating old patterns. I was living by design. Every choice felt intentional. Every day felt like an extension of purpose. I no longer needed to remind myself to think positively. It had become instinctive, like breathing. And that's how I knew the transformation was complete, because what once required discipline now flowed as my natural state. The person I was before this experiment saw life as something to fix. The person I am now sees life as something to create. That difference changes everything. When you live as the source instead of the seeker, you stop depending on external validation. You stop begging life for miracles because you realize you are the miracle, the consciousness through which creation expresses itself. Positive thinking was never about forcing fake optimism. It was about reprogramming my mind to operate from truth. The truth that abundance is always available and that I am always connected to it. Once that awareness settles into your subconscious, you can't go back to fear-based thinking. You see clearly how much energy you used to waste worrying about things that were never real, projections of a limited mindset. The transformation wasn't only mental or emotional, it was spiritual. I began to sense that the same intelligence that grows trees, moves the oceans, and aligns the stars was also guiding my steps. Every time I aligned my thoughts with love, gratitude, and faith, that intelligence responded immediately. It wasn't a theory anymore. It was an experience. The universe wasn't outside of me. It was within me, expressing itself through my consciousness. This realization gave me a new sense of responsibility. If my thoughts shape reality, then I must think with integrity. If my emotions emit frequency, then I must choose them with awareness. Prosperity, I realized, is sacred work. It's the art of mastering energy. The more consciously I think, the more consciously I create. The more love I give, the more life gives back. That's when everything became simple. Not easy, but simple. Because the formula for success and prosperity was no longer a mystery. It was awareness. Awareness of my vibration, awareness of my thoughts, awareness of my alignment. Once you become aware, you become powerful. Because awareness allows choice, and choice allows creation. I also realized that the real reward of this journey wasn't money, achievements, or recognition. The real reward was freedom. Freedom from limitation, freedom from self-doubt, freedom from the invisible prison of negative thinking. That freedom is priceless. Once you taste it, you can never go back to living unconsciously. Now, when I wake up each day, I no longer wonder, what will happen today? Instead, I ask, what energy will I bring into today? Because I know that my energy determines my experience. I am the cause. Life is the effect. And that awareness keeps me grounded, grateful, and creative. What I've learned is that success and prosperity aren't destinations. They are reflections of who you become. And when you become the kind of person who radiates peace, confidence, and gratitude, success has no choice but to follow. It's law. It's alignment. Looking back, I can see how far I've come. From confusion to clarity, from scarcity to abundance, from seeking to becoming. Positive thinking didn't just change my circumstances. It redefined my identity. It made me realize that I am not my past. I am not my mistakes. I am not my fears. I am consciousness choosing to create a new version of reality every single day. And that's what I want for everyone watching this. to understand that you don't need anything external to start transforming your life. You already have everything you need inside you. The thoughts you think, the emotions you nurture, the energy you emit, these are your tools, your instruments of creation. When you use them consciously, the universe bends in your favor. In the end, the greatest manifestation wasn't the money I earned, the opportunities I attracted, or the peace I found. The greatest manifestation was me, the version of myself who finally remembered her power. The version who no longer waits for miracles, but lives as one. The version who understands that every thought, every word, and every emotion carries creative force. And that's the truth I want to leave you with. You are not here to chase prosperity. You are here to express it. You are not here to become successful. You are here to remember that you already are. Everything you desire is not in front of you. It's within you, waiting for your awareness to call it forward. When you truly grasp that, life stops being a struggle and becomes a masterpiece. One you paint with the colors of faith, gratitude, and love every single day. If this message resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own power, your own ability to create abundance and success, then make sure you subscribe to the Success and Prosperity Code channel. Leave a comment below sharing the moment that spoke to your heart most deeply. Like this video if it awakened something in you, and share it with someone who needs to hear that prosperity begins within. Because when you share awareness, you multiply abundance for yourself and for the world.